On today's show is a time that we take the Orlando Magic as a serious threat in the playoffs. Where they rank in the East may surprise you. Plus, we talk about a couple of injuries that are going to impact the race in the West and whether or not the G League Ignite experiment was a success or merely a good idea with poor execution. All of that and more on a Friday edition of Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On NBA. Wes Goldberg here with Tony East. However you might be tuning in on YouTube, Odyssey, or your favorite podcast app, thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use the code all lowercase LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. I want to get to some close wins by the Nuggets and the Bucks in a minute, plus the end of the G League Ignite program. But let's start in Orlando. We never start in Orlando, where the Magic beat the Pelicans 121-106. Jalen Suggs had 22 points. Paolo Banchero put up a triple-double. And the Magic have now won 5 in a row and have climbed to 4th in the East. And I think it's fitting, Tony, that these teams played tonight because the talk for the last week or so has been how we should not be overlooking the Pelicans. But here come the Magic. They take care of them at home. And now I think we need to ask the same question about Orlando. The Magic have been playing really well. They're 12-3 with the 5th best net rating since the All-Star break. Like I said, they've already won 5 in a row. I'm not going to be picking them to come out of the East. Like, that's not the conversation that I'm trying to have. But I don't think that they're going to be a pushover in the playoffs either. They're a team that I think a lot of people just assumed, like the Pelicans, eventually they would just go on a losing streak and they would sink to the play-in tournament and make way for some of the teams that we actually have been talking about all year in the East case, Miami, Philadelphia, teams like that. But that's not happening now with the Knicks losing tonight. The Magic take ownership of 4th place in the Eastern Conference, and it does not look like they're going to slip because I just think that this team is good. Tony, what do you think about the Magic? Is this a team that might be able to make some noise in the playoffs?
I have two full thoughts on the current state of the Magic. The optimists take, and they've earned this, they have the 3rd best defense in the NBA, right? And that travels throughout a regular season. Jamal Mosley got a deserved contract extension because he is the organizer of one of the best defenses in the league. Like, I cover the Pacers. They're one of the only teams that has consistently given the Pacers offense fits this season. They're just huge, right? They play huge players at the 3. Their guards are big. Jalen Suggs is a pest, right? Their defense is fantastic. Let me stop myself, though. Wes, can I read you all 12 teams the Magic have beaten since the All-Star break to poo-poo their record since the All-Star break a little bit?
Go ahead and poo.
Yeah, they beat the Pistons, Nets, Jazz, Pistons again, Hornets, Wizards, Nets, Raptors twice, Hornets again, and then the Pelicans tonight. That is as easy as it gets in terms of a schedule from the All-Star break on. But they just beat a good team tonight. And Brandon Ingram got hurt. We'll talk about that. But they were winning when that happened. Like, they played well in this game. So this was a grown-up win for them. They have good wins throughout the season. They're very recent run of opponents. Like, they lost to the Pacers. They lost to the Knicks. They lost to the Hawks even. Like, when they play better teams, they have worse results since the break. Their schedule's been very favorable. But they do deserve credit for taking care of all of those games, including tonight. And in general, yeah, they're where they are in the East for a reason. Their defense is fantastic, and they're certainly on the right track to being a very frequent contender in the East.
Yeah, I hear you about the post All-Star break schedule. It hasn't been great, and definitely it's inflated some of these numbers. They're second or they're top 2 in defensive rating since the All-Star break. I mentioned the net rating already. There's definitely, definitely some beating up on some bad teams. But the Magic used to be those bad teams,
Yes.
right? The Magic used to be that team that teams would beat up on,
100%.
and they've been doing this all year. They've won 60% of their games. That's a 50-win pace just about. And there's just a lot of things to like. Like you mentioned the defensive rating. They've been such a great defensive team all year. Jamal Mosley has this team playing so connected and so well. And while you can kind of make the caveat for the lack of schedule strength since the All-Star break, but this team has gotten better. I do want the offense part of it put aside for a second. We'll get to that. But just defensively, I watch this team and they are such on a string and they just know what the assignment is tonight against New Orleans. like pre-rotating to make sure that they always had size on Zion. The whole Pelicans offense is built around point Zion Williamson, bringing the ball up, forcing some switches, confusing opponents. It's weird. It's like this inverted offense. The Pelicans have had a ton of success with it. Zion is thriving, and they grinded that whole offense basically to a halt tonight, to the point where Zion basically just sat the whole fourth quarter because this game was over, only played 29 minutes in the game. So you watch them and they're like, okay, like Jalen Suggs would get switched onto Zion behind the play while something else was happening at the top of the play, and you've got him and like Wendell Carter Jr. just communicating and pre-switching everything so that doesn't become a mismatch that Brandon Ingram before he got hurt, or Herb Jones or CJ McCollum can exploit later on in the possession. So they're so well connected, they're so well coached. I love the culture, I love how they compete. I think back to the first game of the season when Jalen Suggs was like basically on the brink of tears because they lost a close game to the Lakers. Like, this team really wants it and they play like it. And I've just been so impressed with them. And like I said, I just sort of always expected, because of the Magic, to eventually fall back into the play-in. And they're now 4.5 games out of the play-in. Like, barring a huge collapse that basically everybody's been waiting on and has yet to happen, this team is going to be a legit top 6 seed in the Eastern Conference. And I look at the rest of this group and I'm like, I don't know. Like, they're not better than Boston and Milwaukee. I'm not going to sit here, but like, Cleveland's banged up. The Knicks are banged up. And then you look at like the Pacers, the Sixers, we have no idea what's going on with Joel Embiid. The Miami Heat, you don't want to count them out. Like, I'm not trying to overlook them, but like right now, is it fair to say, like, are the Orlando Magic the third best team in the Eastern Conference? You can make the argument, right?
As it stands, you certainly can, especially based on recent form. And like in the last 5 games they've played, the most points they've given up in one game is 106. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's insane, right? You can go back even farther. Oh my goodness, I should have done this exercise before we started. They've only given up 110. Wow, this is crazy. They've given up 110 points once since the All-Star break, and it was 111 to the Pacers. Like, that says everything about their defense. What stood out to me about their defense throughout the season, tracking the Magic, is like Wendell Carter's hurt, and they have to start Goga Bitadze. Great, no problem. They can do that. Guard depth issues, they have to start their rookie, Anthony Black. Great, they can do that. Markelle Fultz, Gary Harris in and out, no problem. Franz Wagner in and out, no problem. Like, that is so impressive and says a lot about Jamal Mosley. And, I'm sure you're doing this covering the Heat too, like covering the Pacers. I've been tracking like every team, Cavs through Hawks schedule and standings all the time. And I kept with the Magic being like, okay, once they get through this easy stretch, that's when I learn a lot about the Magic. Well, game 1, 15-point win over a team everybody keeps gassing up. Like, that's a great start. That's how you get some attention. They earned it. They dominated this team.
They're 11-3 since the All-Star break, and that coincides with taking Markelle Fultz out of the starting lineup and moving Gary Harris in, right? And so that puts another floor spacer on the court. Jalen Suggs has turned into a legitimately good three-point shooter.
Jalen Suggs make all defense.
I adore Jalen Suggs. He is
awesome.
In my starting 5 of whatever my All-Stars are, and I don't know what those are, but he's part of the Locked On NBA Fridays All-Stars for sure, along with Herb Jones. This was a good night for Locked On NBA Fridays, but there, since the All-Star break too, like, the biggest weakness with the Magic was the three-point shooting, the lack of spacing. They were 29th in three-point shooting percentage before the All-Star break. They're 10th. They are 10th since the All-Star break. And Paolo Banchero is making his threes. Jalen Suggs is making his threes. Franz Wagner is making contested threes all the time. They're getting threes from Mo Wagner. They're getting and I think just the addition of Gary Harris, and then when Gary Harris didn't start in the second half of this game because of a foot soreness, it doesn't sound like it's a long-term issue. They put in Caleb Houston in there, who's like a 38% shooter this year, smaller sample, but a decent three-point shooter, at least they think so. Like, there's tools. They bring Jonathan Isaac off the bench. He does things every other night. Like, they're very toolsy. But the other story from this game was Brandon Ingram. He gets hurt. Looked like he knocked knees with Jalen Suggs when Suggs was driving to the basket.
Don't watch the video. If you haven't, do not watch it.
His knee buckles. It looks like a hyperextension. It's not good. He was ruled out for the rest of the game. The Pelicans said he's going to undergo an MRI here pretty soon. How big of a deal is it if Ingram has to miss some time, Tony?
Potentially very. The thing about the Pelicans that point Zion has kind of made this not the case anymore, but there's times when they really need shot creation, right? Like, that's kind of where I fall short with them sometimes, and McCollum can do some of that, and Zion's really good at it, but Ingram is also very good at it, and without that, they are more limited, a little more predictable, very reliant on their shooters to hit what are now going to be less open shots, and he himself was having a pretty good game in this game, like before getting hurt. He's just good, right? So I hate to be Captain Obvious, but like they're way worse without him, obviously. And whoever replaces him has a way different skill set. And I think that's where they might have to adjust on the fly. It's been fun. The irony of the reason they built this big cushion over these other teams is being healthier. Well, now they'll have to figure out if they can remain ahead without Ingram. And hopefully it's something he can come back from before the playoffs, because this Pelicans team has earned the right to have Zion Williamson in the playoffs.
I think they'll be okay in the regular season.
I think so
Brandon
too.
Ingram, if he has to miss a couple weeks, like they'll have Trey Murphy III, who actually had 21 points on the night, outscored Brandon Ingram, had played a little bit more, but had a good game, and he's been playing well for them all year, coming off the bench behind Herb Jones now. Well, now you could just put Trey Murphy and Herb Jones in the starting lineup together, length defense around Zion and CJ McCollum. I think they could survive. The problem is the playoffs. If Brandon Ingram is going to have to miss time in the playoffs, and again, we don't know yet what the extent of the injury is, but if he does have to miss time in the playoffs, the West is a bloodbath, and you need, like you said already, Tony, like as much talent as you could possibly have.
Yep.
You need that in the West, and if the Pelicans are trying to advance and go deep in the Western playoffs, in the Western side of the bracket, they're going to need Brandon Ingram for sure. But we will get more information on the status of Brandon Ingram's knee in the coming days. We have more injury news to get to, plus a big development when it comes to the NBA G League. We'll get to that next here on Locked On NBA. Today's episode of Locked On NBA is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with over 3 million members. They're the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's just you against the numbers. You pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. It's demon time on Prize Picks. You can now win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000 with Demon Time. Demons and Goblins are the newest and most exciting way to play at Prize Picks. Squares marked with red demons or green goblins get you different payouts. You can now win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. Prize Picks also offers injury insurance, so your injuries stay in play even if one of your players gets hurt. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and doesn't return in the second half, that player projection won't count against you, and the rest of your entries stay alive. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types are what makes Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Prize Picks offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday each Tuesday. Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value. Prize Picks now offers Apple Pay for quick and easy deposits into your account this basketball season. So go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use the code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use the code LockedOnNBA, all lowercase, for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more. Pick less. It's that easy. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all the shouting, sports screaming? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Before we get to the end of the G League Ignite experiment, let's touch on a couple more games. In Milwaukee, the Bucks blew a 20-point lead, but then pulled away from the Nets late thanks to some clutch shot making by Damian Lillard, who had 13 points in the fourth quarter. Tony, what was your takeaway from this game?
I was prepared to gush about the Bucks defense. That was my first note I made all game. They're up 20 in the first half. And then in the second half, it felt like their defense kind of stunk. But that's not actually what happened in the second half. The Bucks just couldn't freaking score at all, and the Nets were crushing them in transition. Either way, the Bucks did hold on to win, but that is, I think, everybody's talked about this since Doc Rivers took over. They just look so. Giannis returned in this game, which is why it was noteworthy to me to watch the Bucks again, see how they looked. But especially when they have Giannis, Brook, and a capable defender on the floor, whether that's Jay Crowder, whether that's Patrick Beverly, whether that's Bobby Portis, it just like looks good. Like they're communicating, they're sliding. There's no real angles for the other team to get a good shot off. And yeah, they played the Nets, who have a really crummy offense, but their defensive evolution from early season to now. Like after 15 games, I think the Bucks were like 11-4. And I remember tweeting something like, man, the Bucks have a really great record, but I think every time I watch them, they're unimpressive. Like now they're wobbly, but they look better, right? And so this game kind of was emblematic of that. And they did give it away because they only scored 21 points in the third quarter. But then in clutch time, Dame showed up and he finished with 30 and he had a bunch of assists. He looked awesome and they got it done. And like, that's kind of what the hopeful blueprint for the Bucks would be, is that their defense maintained and Dame would add to their offense. And they had that this game. They looked like the team that everybody kind of thought they would be. And if I can go niche on the Bucks, how niche can I go, Wes?
You could go pretty niche. I mean, I don't know. Are we going to be talking like Marjan Beauchamp? But how niche are we?
More granular, baby. Okay.
Let's go.
Rotation decision. The Bucks continue to make every game. Do they play AJ Green or Danilo Gallinari? AJ Green is good. AJ Green 5 threes in this game. I think AJ Green should play every game, and Gallo should be a break classic game emergency player. I like AJ Green. He's good. No one cares, but he helped them in this game. He had 15 points.
That matters, though. I'm glad you bring that up, because part of Doc Rivers' like to-do list when he took the job from Adrian Griffin was, okay, who's coming off the bench? Who are the guys that I trust? And Adrian Griffin played a lot of Marjan Beauchamp, a lot of Andre Jackson Jr. off the bench. And I like that. I liked it for their development and things like that. Doc Rivers is not about developing. He's like, if you're not good, you're not playing. I'm not going to bother developing you. That's not what I'm here for. I'm here to go win with players who are ready to win. And he seems to trust AJ Green, who was not getting that run under AJ Griffin. So I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just because Green is a more proven shooter. Maybe Beauchamp and Andre Jackson are more theoretically good defenders than actually good defenders and all these things. But he trusts AJ Green, and he's playing in a lot of these games too. And I think he's going to be part of their playoff rotation. But we'll see. Defensively, yeah, they're better than they were under Griffin. I've heard a lot about, Milwaukee's really figured out their defense. They fixed it. I don't know. I'm still a little underwhelmed. Yeah, I won't go that far. Yeah, I'm a little underwhelmed by them at times. But look, the numbers are the numbers. They are 19th in defensive rating, but they go up to 6th in crunch time in defensive rating. They have the 6th best crunch time defense. Now, much smaller sample, a lot more variance and noise involved in that number. But you watch these games, and that also, like, the eye test bears it out. This team does have an ability to lock in when it matters, and not just offensively. We talk a lot about their crunch time offense because of Damian Lillard, but their crunch time defense does kick into gear. Like, there is something there with an intensity and a connectivity that is different than basically the rest of the game. And they remind me, Tony, of like the Big Three Miami Heat a little bit in like 2014, when they basically kind of already figured it out. And they were like, look, we just have a ton of talent. We're not trying to win 27 games in a row. We don't really care anymore. We're gonna basically yawn through 3 quarters and then turn it on for the last 12 minutes of the game and just beat every team that we play. And we're gonna win as many games as we need to. And that kind of reminds me of this Bucks team, because they are so freaking talented. They still have Giannis. They have Dame. Brook Lopez is still great. They have a bunch of talent up and down the roster. They're very top-heavy, but it works. It works, and the pieces do fit. Even if they don't work together as much as we would like to see them work together, they do fit. The pieces fit, and it's enough, right? It's enough right now. Is it enough to get to the NBA Finals? We'll see. But there are glimpses, like you're mentioning. Like, there's glimpses where it's like, wow, maybe this team does have it. How much longer do they have to have it in a playoff series? We'll see, but that's that. Let's go to Denver, where the Nuggets beat the Knicks, snapping New York's 4-game win streak. Nikola Jokic had a 30-point triple-double, and Michael Porter Jr. poured in 31. Tony, my takeaway from this game is Nikola Jokic is running away with the MVP.
It's over. It's over.
It's over. He so casually gets these triple-doubles. He is so clearly the best player all the time. Late in this game, the Knicks come back. They beginning of the fourth quarter, Jokic on the bench, as he usually is. They get it to 90-88. Jokic comes in. What happens? The Nuggets go on a run. They blow him out. Game over. And the Knicks are a good team, and they were playing really well tonight. Jalen Brunson had a great game, and it just didn't matter because Jokic is that good. All right. Some injury news. It was reported that the Kings guard, Kevin Huerter, has a dislocated shoulder and a labral tear. There's no timeline for his return. Tony, how big of a deal is Huerter's injury for the Kings, who need wins and need somebody to step up in his place?
What a disaster day for the Kings.
Yeah.
They lose Kevin Huerter and they lose to the Wizards on the same day. Every time they get into 6, I feel like they have some momentum. Poof, there it goes. Mavs, I believe, won tonight. Yeah, it's a big deal, right? Kevin Huerter, it hasn't been as much there, as like at his peak right after he got traded from the Hawks. He was like lights out level shooting this year, only at 36%. But it's still a valuable shooter on a team that likes to get him up. And even if he's in and out of the starting lineup at times this year, he mostly has started. That's where this ends. He starts a lot. They have Malik Monk, who's good. And can kind of slide in, but now who's his backup? Does Chris Duarte start to play more? Does Keon Ellis just get a bunch of minutes? They like him; he's a good defender. I don't know, but they lose shooting, which is valuable on a team that has Fox and Sabonis and is good on offense and like the spacing. And yeah, I think it's big for them, especially as they try to avoid the West plan that is like the only thing discussed on TV. Yeah, the Kings are trying to avoid it, and they lost Kevin Huerter.
They are in the play-in, right? If the play-in were to start today,
I think they were sixth entering the day, and then
So
had
now they're
about.
They're a half
They had
game
the
behind Dallas now.
What an awful day for the poor
great.
Kings. Disaster.
Well, that's what happens when you lose to the Wizards. And look, they did start Keon Ellis in Huerter's place. They like to bring Malik Monk off the bench. Mike Brown is pretty adamant about keeping Monk in that 6-man role. But Keon Ellis went 1 for 3 for 2 points in that loss to the Wizards.
I'm a Keon Ellis fan, but
I am too.
You see the limitations.
Yeah, he's shooting like 38% from 3 for the season. I think some of that's a little fake. I think some of it's like streaky, small sample size stuff, but defensively he's good. There's some ball handling stuff you like there, but here's the thing is if you're relying this much on Kevin Huerter, a nice player, no disrespect to Kevin Huerter, I think it's a symptom of other problems, right? Like
they need more
Kevin Huerter is a fine player, but it shouldn't be like a disaster if you no longer have him. And I don't think it's a disaster for Sacramento, but it's too close to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. These Kings are excited. I really want the Kings to make the playoffs because it feels like every game they play is super exciting for no reason.
Yes.
But like tonight, you see, they have less spacing, and Fox is just awful. Fox took 30 shots and had 25 points. Like that is a disaster. And then they're relying on other guys to step up and shoot. And Huerter spot Keon Ellis over 2. And then the thing that stood out to me a lot this season watching them is like I just said this. They need more shooters. Harrison Barnes took 2 in 29 minutes. Like he should be a guy who's getting up 5-6 a game, and now they might need him to. And he hasn't been that accurate or that volume on that volume. That was a sentence. So yeah, they'll have to change some things to figure it out. And I am hopeful the Kings make the playoffs. But today was a very big blow to my hopes.
It does feel like I love the Sacramento Kings. I have an affinity to the Sacramento Kings. It's one of my favorite arenas. Great fan base, all these things. I've covered a bunch of games there.
No one cares about the arenas for us, Wes, but Golden One Center,
it's the best arena in the
awesome.
League. It's the best arena in the league. Your arena in Indianapolis is not far behind, but they're turning into a pumpkin a little bit, the Sacramento Kings. And the more I watch them, the more I don't believe in them as a legit team in the playoffs. Would be happy to be proved wrong, but they're just not passing the sniff test as much anymore. And you mentioned some changes. It does feel like maybe some changes are going to be needed this summer. They need to kind of refigure some things around, revamp the roster around De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis. But that's a conversation for a different day. We're going to move on. A big announcement about the NBA G League. We're going to talk about the G League Ignite being extinguished after this on Locked On NBA. Today's episode of Locked On NBA is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Before we get to our Friday countdown, let's move on to some news. It was announced on Thursday that the NBA will end the G League Ignite experiment. In case our listeners are unaware, the G League Ignite was a G League team created in 2020 that accepted college-aged players who were not eligible for the NBA. The idea was to give them a chance to develop in an NBA-like program while also earning money. Some alum include Scoot Henderson, Jalen Green, Dyson Daniels, Jonathan Kuminga. They have some projected top picks on this year's team, and that's going to be obviously the final team. What did you make of the experiment, and do you think it was a success, Tony?
Yeah, the idea I think made sense for the NBA to say, let's get some of these guys that are going to be in our league, in our program, for lack of a better term, earlier, right? We can develop them. Teams can see them easier. The resources are there. The trouble is that the investment is all about development there. And what worked early to me is, I don't know how much you were really locked in on the Ignite, but if you remember, like they got Jarrett Jack on that team right away,
Yep.
right? They had like real NBA players or at least recent NBA players and vets in there that made the basketball more real, added consequence, added a vet in the room to like help guide these guys through it. And that had some early success stories. Jalen Green looks like he's going to be really good. Scoot Henderson got like in the actual draft, it kind of worked. But in terms of like developing the talent and making it a real program, like they're awful this season.
Mm-hmm.
Like they don't have that anymore. And I think that has really hurt what this was supposed to be, because part of developing guys to prep them for the NBA is NBA institutional knowledge. And like a guy like Jarrett Jack, who just going to be the poster of my argument, is huge for that, but they don't have that, right? And so I think that's been a big part of why, it's been such a mess and they didn't get off the ground the way they hoped.
Yeah, and look, the advent of the NIL in college sports basically ended the whole G League. The whole idea of the G League Ignite was
even OTE
you
was
get
paying
paid
good
in
money.
college, right? OTE and all these things, and so look, the Jarrett Jack point is such a good one. But without Jarrett Jack, they didn't really have that guy. It's hard to find veteran players who might be trying to work their way back into the NBA who are going to willingly take a back seat to 18-year-olds,
right,
who are basically the reason this thing exists, and their development is the priority, not trying to get these other vets into the NBA where they might otherwise are trying to get into the NBA, so they're going to go sign with other G League teams. It always felt like a little half-baked, the whole G League Ignite idea in the first place. I appreciated where the NBA was trying to go with it, but this was a flop. It absolutely failed. It did not work. Even if you want to say, like, the NBA can kind of hold up Jalen Green and Jonathan Kuminga and Scoot Henderson as success stories, but these players would have been developed better in college, no? Like, put them in a collegiate program that with coaches like John Calipari and whoever, all these guys who are used to developing these players, these kinds of players who have that knowledge of how to do it with a team like that at higher level competition. No offense to the G League, but like some of these higher end of college sports have higher level competition, bigger stakes, tournaments, things that we can actually use with coaching staffs and programs that have already been built to develop these kinds of players. Like Kuminga is in year 3, and it kind of feels like he's still a rookie. I know he's playing well, but like this is the first time he's played well. It feels like even Jalen Green was a little behind the 8 ball when he got in. Like I think there's a lot of people who went to college, even just for a year, who just looked better in the pros than these guys did who were in the G League Ignite. And so I know they have a couple of more players coming out. We'll see what they look like. I don't think it's going to be a whole lot better. So I think this absolutely flopped. I think it was a failure. They can blame the NIL if they want, but it was never really working in the first place, and I'm kind of glad it's over.
Yeah, the other thing that makes it feel weird now is every NBA team has a direct affiliate, so it's just kind of there, and there's the Mexico City team also is there now, but that has other benefits and is not tied to developing players. It's supposed to be a winning G League program, right? So it's different. And I agree with you that, right away at first it was like the money was a big incentive along with the development path, but then NIL came in and now that advantage is completely gone. And you already see that Villanova, Kentucky,
right.
Every player drafted from there seems like they're
you
ready
can
to
go make more money and get better developed at a blue chip college program than you would in the G League Ignite, and there it is. Yeah. That's why it's over. It's Friday, which means it's time to count down to the weekend with our weekly power rankings. I'm
not a system player. I am a system player.
We're counting down the most surprising stats since the All-Star break. Tony, are you ready?
What color Power Ranger would you be, Wes?
Red. That's obvious.
Yes, I'm ready.
Honorable mention before we get to our top 5. Most charges drawn since the break. Do you venture a guess?
Good gosh. Josh Hart.
No, good guess though. Brandon Podziemski
Ah,
He's got 8 of them.
pods.
It's why his
love it.
his face is always bleeding. Honorable mention, go Pods. All right. First one is the one we already talked about. The Orlando Magic are behind only the Nuggets and the Celtics in win percentage since the All-Star break. The Nuggets and the Celtics, which is probably going to be the NBA Finals, or is the betting favorite to be the NBA Finals. The Orlando Magic right behind them at 12-3. Good for Orlando, man.
The holy trinity of contenders, baby. Love
That's
it.
man. Pelican Pincaro making the leap. That's number 5. Number 4. Who is leading the league in three-point shooting since the break? Do you want to guess on this one?
Wow, this one's gonna be a lot harder. Do I get a hint of any kind?
Western
Leading-
Conference.
Leading the league,
Western Conference guard.
Jalen Green.
No, but it's a good. That was a good guess.
He's on fire recently.
Yeah. It's Grayson Allen. He's making 4.1
Oh, I should have got that,
threes per
actually.
game
Dang.
on 48.3% shooting. He's on fire. That's number 4. The third most surprising stat since the All-Star break. I'm not even gonna let you guess on this one because it's just weird. The Lakers are 3rd in offensive rating and 28th in defensive rating, which is basically the opposite of what they were for most of the season. That team is so confusing. I don't get it. It's like, wow, we finally got our offense together. Now our defense is in the toilet. Good job, Lakers. That's why you're still in the play-in.
That is the trade-off of having lots of players who are only good on one end of the floor. I wouldn't
It's
even
what
close
happens when
Jalen
D'Angelo Russell starts playing great. It's like, wow, this guy's scoring 28 points
Gotta
per game,
play
but
him.
how much is he giving up?
Jalen Green at 39%. I was not even close.
39% for Jalen Green is a big improvement, though. Shout out to
It
Jalen
is.
Green. Second most surprising stat. Domantas Sabonis has the most double-doubles since the break. Nikola Jokic, after tonight, has the second most double-doubles. He had a triple-double, but second most double-doubles also counts. But do you know who is tied with Anthony Davis for the third most double-doubles since the All-Star break?
Isaiah Hartenstein?
No. Good guess. He's up
He's
there.
balling.
He is balling. He had a great game tonight. He played
He
great.
did.
It's
Is it Vooch?
Detroit's own Jalen Duren.
Oh. Can I give a small Jalen Duren tidbit?
Do it.
I was in Detroit last night for Pacers Pistons. You're around a lot of NBA players, Wes. No one really surprises you with how big they are anymore when you're around these guys all the time. Jalen Duren is freaking huge and muscular, and I was like, "Whoa!" It's very rare that happens to me anymore. But
Is he like peak like Dwight Howard in person
yes,
almost? Yeah,
yes.
that's what it reminds me of. Yeah, I love him. He's great. He's a monster, dude. All right, most surprising stat since the All-Star break. Do you know who is 4th in scoring since the break? Points per game.
Just straight up points.
Points per game. We're going old school. Just points per game. Counting stats,
I
baby.
mean, do I just pick someone on some crappy team who's scoring a bunch?
Not a crappy team. There's your guess.
Oh,
There's your hint. I mean,
and that makes this extremely hard.
number 1 is Luka. Number 2 is SGA.
Okay, great.
I'll give you number 3 too. Number 3 is Giannis.
I don't know.
It's Jaylen Brown.
He is hooping.
He's hooping, man. 28.4 points per game on 53% shooting.
He had that.
Most
I mean,
surprising
obviously the
stats.
Denver game being the most notable, but like he's been just as good as Tatum since the All-Star break. This is
Arguably better.
he's defending well too. This is the best stretch of his career.
Yeah, and he's sort of like the sledgehammer within like the Boston Celtics, Swiss watch construction. He's a guy that's just a needed dose of physicality every once in a while. Like
Can we enter the bold take?
Go.
If he's this good in the playoffs, they leapfrog the Nuggets as Tony's favorite. Is that actually that bold?
I don't know. I mean, but it's a take. We ended on a take. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day.